Hi, my name is Kerry Critchlow from RCR Recording Studios, and today we are going to continue going through examples of, practical examples of how to actually write or produce a song, a beat, music, however you want to look at it. But this is the process of production. And so we're going to go over some more examples of this today. Just as a refresher, this is kind of my sort of process for how to write or produce a song. And we're just going to go over this briefly because we've gone over this before, but you're going to find your inspiration. You're going to lay down the foundation. You're going to create your templates for, the verses, choruses, bridges, or your A section, your B section, your C section, your D section, what have you. And then fill in the details. And then as you're going, you're constantly asking yourself, does this sound good to me throughout the entire process, right? Last time we went over the key of A. I've gone ahead and just put in the key of E for this week just to give a little bit of variety. And so you can see here the chords in the key of E and the notes in the key of E. And then you have your chord degrees, your scale numbers. And then if you want to, you can increase, you can implement sevenths into your chord structures as well. I'm not sure if we're going to do any of that today, but they exist. And then you have your whole scale formula here if you want to figure out how to do these keys. If you really want to dig deeper into how this all kind of comes together from a framework standpoint, go ahead and check out my videos on chord theory, and this will it'll explain kind of how we put all this together. But today we're going to be using this as a framework for creating a new song in the key of E. All right. And again, we're keeping these examples very basic on purpose, for two reasons. A, it would take a lot of time to really flesh out a full-fledged production, more than probably most of you are willing to sit through. And B, this whole series is really geared for beginners, people who are kind of just getting started. Now, that's not to say, if you've been doing this a while, you can't learn something new, but or get some creative ideas from the things I'm doing. But the basic idea here is to show a beginner how they can get started and start utilizing these concepts to write their own music. And so with that, we'll get started. We'll go ahead and bring up a piano. And I think last time we went over the chord degrees and started with the chords. Today, I think we're going to try and go off of a melody. So we're going to put the melody in first, and then we'll go ahead and try and put some chords around that, just to give you some different examples of how you can go about writing songs. But there's no right or wrong way. You don't have to start with chords first. You don't have to start with drums first or whatever. There are lots of ways you can go about doing this. And so I want to try and approach it from a different perspectives, so that if one works better for you, then you kind of can get your head wrapped around the different ways that you can go ahead and kind of start doing this. So we're going to come up with a relatively simple melody on a piano today, and then we will start putting our song together from there. But the melody will be the inspiration, so to speak, in this case. So we'll go ahead and bring up our piano roll. And we're going to be in the key of E. And in the key of E, these are the notes that we can use if we want to stay in the key. Now, there's things that you can do to take yourself outside of a key in certain instances. That's kind of more advanced music theory, and so we're going to kind of stay away from that for the most part. But it probably doesn't hurt to let you know that it's okay if you use notes that are outside the key, as long as you know what you're doing and how to make that work. There are things like substitutions and things like this that you can use to make it perfectly okay to use different notes that are outside the key. And we'll probably get into that kind of stuff in a future video. But for today, we're going to keep it real simple and just use the notes in the key and keep it real standard and real beginner friendly. So our notes that we can use are E, F sharp, G sharp, A, B, C sharp, D sharp, and then back to E again. And so those are the notes we're going to be sticking with when we create our melody. All right, so that's our scale. All right. Oop. All right. And then we're just going to copy and paste this out for now. And as you can see, like oftentimes when I'm doing this process, I am playing it so that I can kind of hear what like the reference it, make sure I'm liking what's happening as we go, right? And so if you hear me repeat a small section over and over again, I'm just making sure that I like what I'm hearing, or I'm auditioning or trying something out, and I can always change this later, but you kind of have to listen. And you'll notice what I'm doing here is I'm skipping the first beat. So these are quarter notes, but I'm putting in an eighth note rest before the melody begins. You don't have to start the melody on beat 1 or wherever. Like this is very arbitrary. You can start the melody on any beat you want, and you can vary up the rhythms, vary up the pitches, and all sorts of things to keep it sort of interesting as you go. And I might change this up later once we get more of the structure going. This is kind of just a basic melody kind of had going through my head. I may have borrowed it from somewhere, so if this sounds familiar, there's a very good chance it does. All right. And we're going to start with this, and we're going to see what happens. But this is kind of like a basic melody. Like I said, it may be familiar. I may have borrowed it from somewhere, but it's just something I had floating around my head this morning. And so I thought we could use it as a quick example. And I may have to tweak it, like I said. So, but we'll go from there. So we have our melody. And this is an E, an F sharp, and a G here. And then back to an E, and then that repeats. And then we come up here, and then we have a B, an A, a G sharp, and then back to E. So it's very, very simple, and we're just using the notes. So E, F sharp, G, back to E, E, F sharp, G, back to E, and then B, A, G sharp, and back to E, B, A, G sharp, and back to E. All right. You don't have to use every single note. You can. There's nothing wrong with using every single note in the scale, but you don't have to. And the idea is you want to kind of just vary up rhythms and pitches in order to create a melody. And you can be just to keep it interesting. But like again, there's no rule. As long as it sounds good to you, it's good. And if it doesn't sound good to you, change it. So hopefully this is helping and you're kind of understanding what's going on here. But this is sort of just, the basics of melody here. And I may change up some of the timing of this once we get into it. Actually, what I can do here, and this might be helpful for you as well, if you don't have a drum track going on, is put a metronome in here. So we're going to play our metronome and listen to this and maybe see if the beats are lining up the way I think they're supposed to. Okay, so it's faster than what we want here, 132, so we want to half this. My math is not the best, but I think that this would be 66 if we half it. Well, maybe not. Okay. We may have to drastically change this because for some reason this is really not sounding like it's super on beat. But we'll continue for now and just see what happens. So we've got our melody going on. Let's go ahead and you know what? Since we did electronic drums last time, let's do more of an actual like acoustic kit today. And we'll do a different drum program just to expose you to some different things. So this Addicted Drummer 2, really love this. Really love these drum sounds. They're a little bit more like indie or like lo-fi. They're not high quality. They're very high quality drums, but they got just like a more of a kind of a, I don't know how to explain it, more of a indie vibe or lo-fi vibe, even though they're very high quality, high fidelity. And I'm just picking out some of my my toms here. And we'll just... All right. So we've put together our drum kit, and I'm just kind of choosing some things. All right, and you can add other things or take them out, but like I'm just creating a basic kit here. And we'll go ahead and open up our piano roll view here. And what's nice about some of these acoustic sounding drum kits is that they have different kind of hi-hatty sounds, and so what you can do is alternate them a little bit. And maybe I do want these to move over. Yeah, let's give a full beat. I think that might have been the issue before. But because these sounds are a little bit different, and actually probably want to do it this way. And that's going to give that kind of human feel that we would get if we turned every other one down. So in music, you have what's called strong beats and weak beats. The strong beats are generally going to happen on the quarter notes, and the weak beats tend to happen on the and beats if it's an eighth note pattern. And so the quarter note hits are just going to have a little bit more of a strong feel to them, and the in-between hits on the eighth notes, the ands, the 1 and 2 and, the ands, are going to be a little weaker. They're going to feel a little bit more subdued, just naturally. If you listen to, like, most drummers play the hi-hat, this is kind of what's happening naturally as they do it. And so we want to make sure that the strong beats on the quarter notes are a little louder, a little bit more forceful, and that the weak beats are a little quieter, a little more chill. And because that hit sounds a little louder, a little more expressive than this one here, we're getting sort of a strong, weak, strong, weak, strong, weak, strong, weak feel on this eighth note. Okay? And that doesn't mean you can't turn these velocities down a little bit if you wanted to. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's less needful when you have the strong beats kind of happening naturally anyways. And again, we're putting snare on 3, which is giving it a bit of a slower feel. Like I said, I think this 132 is a little fast for what I had in mind with this melody. And so we're actually probably playing this closer to whatever half of 32 is. Again, math is not my strong suit, but I think it's like 66, if I'm not mistaken. I very well could be. And then... And so this snare on 3 is giving it more of like a slower feel than the tempo is actually allowing for. But we're just working with it because I don't feel like redoing everything right now and finding the perfect tempo. And as a matter of fact, I think I actually want to give all of these a bit more velocity here on the kick and snare especially. And we'll turn down this kick just a little bit because, again, an actual drummer will probably play this beat slightly weaker than the strong beat. That's not what I meant to do. So we'll turn on the velocities. We'll copy paste this out. All right. And I'm just giving some accents on the open hi-hat just to add a little bit of interest and kind of give it a fun little groove. Again, none of this is necessary, and you don't have to do it like I've done it here, where it's just kind of, every other on beats 2 and 4 that the hi-hat's going to an open hi-hat. You can have it be open hi-hat less often, more often, like whatever your fancy is. This is kind of what I'm feeling in the moment. If I was doing this tomorrow, I might approach it completely differently. This is just sort of, excuse me, very arbitrary at this point in time. I'm just sort of messing around, having some fun. Don't be afraid to experiment. Don't be afraid to try things out. Have fun with it. Okay, and so the second half of this melody is definitely going to need a little bit of work with the timing. I like the notes. It's the timing that I think needs some changing. So maybe... Okay, so that's better. The melody is fixed and feels like we're in much better way with time. So if we were to mute our drums and play our metronome, in theory, this should sound a little less lopsided or weird. Yeah, way better, way better. So we fixed the issues. And like I said, you might not get it right the first time when you go through and do this kind of stuff. And so it's okay to, approximate where you think things ought to be and then change it later to make it closer to what it is that you want. And so here we have a very simple melody line happening and a relatively simple drum groove happening here. And, it's starting to come together a little bit. Okay. And I might want to play around with trying out some delay and possibly some reverb on this. We'll make sure that we have that we're tying this into our BPM here at 132. And then we'll, play the piano and see if I like this delay or not. If not, then we'll turn it off. This is, again, just some fun experimentation. You don't have to use this. I'm just trying to, I want to see what it would happen when we do this. Okay, so right now we've got it set up as a direct insert, and when we have it set up as a direct insert, this mix knob is going to control how much or how little the delay is. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a aux track here, and we'll call this delay. And we're going to set up a send to our aux track. So we're going to send this piano to our delay, and then our delay is feeding back into our master bus. And then we're going to increase this to 100%. So now this is our 100% delay channel. This is our dry channel, and we can control how much this delay effect we're getting through our send level here. And maybe I want to do half on both of them. All right, and then I want to send a little bit of verb into there as well. On the same channel. And so we're making our delay have reverb on it, which kind of gives a sort of a fun little spacey sound. And that's just giving a little bit of space to the piano. And I'm not going for perfection here. I'm just kind of giving you some ideas on what you can do if you want to add just a little bit of vibe to your melody line here. There's other ways you can, go about doing it as well, but I'm just sort of giving you some rough guide. So now we have like sort of a wet delay happening. And as you saw, I turned down our wet dry a little bit so that a little bit less of the reverb is happening to this delay. And I'm increasing the amount of reverb that's happening. Like the time of it, how long the reverb's going to last. That And I'm turning off the early reflections so that we're just getting kind of the long tail of the reverb and not the slap back kind of element that would happen in a room, as we've gone over in previous videos. And so just trying to incorporate how you can utilize some of these tools in order to kind of bring your productions to life. And this is giving a nice little vibe to the piano. All right. We can also, if we choose to later down the road, change our piano sound to something different if we want a different melody or whatever. Piano is just a simple, easy sound to work with, and so that's kind of arbitrarily why I chose it. But once we add in some of our other elements, I might decide that we want a different sound here for our melody. In which case, we wouldn't use this reverb or delay, or maybe we would. But I mean, nothing is set in stone. We can change anything. We're just kind of getting a basic sort of structure here. So like if we go back to our thing, we're just laying down the foundation right now, right? We're just, playing with some ideas and trying to see what happens when we start putting this stuff in. And so now we've got some drums and a melody. Let's see what happens when we do some chords. And maybe for this, we'll do a synth. And we'll bring up a different type of synth than we're used to seeing. Like I said last week, I just want to give you guys some examples of some different interfaces and different ways of doing it. So this is called Massive. You can, choose from presets if you want, or you can create your own. This has kind of some fun, unique features. of its own. But you have your oscillator sections here. You have your LFO section kind of here, your envelope section over here, and some and some fun stuff, your filter section. So like it's got all the sort of basic components of a synthesizer, but it's just a different interface and a different way of kind of utilizing the options, if you will. So that's probably not a great sound for chords. Go to our browser here just to make it a little easier. And let's see, type maybe some pad kind of stuff here. And we may want to turn this down some. Then bring back our roll. And so just go through some of these. And see if we like anything. Okay, so maybe something simple like this for now. Okay, and so we've got an E and a B. This is an E major chord without the third, so it's the 1 and the 5. If we come over to our thing, an E major chord is going to have an E as our 1 and B as our 5, and we're just not playing the G sharp here, and we're just going to have like an E5 is what it's, I guess, technically called, which means it doesn't have the third in it. But for all intents and purposes, this is an E major chord. And then I think I want a C sharp. And maybe have this B drone on, maybe. And then down to an A. And keep this B droning on. And then actually what might be fun is to have this B and E always playing. And then just have our tonics change. Okay. And so, in the key of E, excuse me, we're always having our 5 and our 1 playing, no matter what chord we're on. So technically what the chords are that the implied chords, if you will, would be an E major which is our 1, a C sharp minor, which is our 6, and then an A, which is our 4. So our chord progression would be an E major for, what, 2 bars, 4 bars? What is this? So if this is an 8-bar loop, yeah, so if this is an 8-bar loop, 4 bars is our E major, 2 bars is our C sharp minor, and 2 bars is our A major. But they are implied chords. So the notes that we're using are E, B, and E for our E major. We're using a C sharp, a B, and an E for our C sharp minor. The C sharp minor would actually have the an E in it. So C sharp minor is C sharp, E, and G sharp. If we were to do, I guess we'll do this here. If you remember from last week, we went over this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So a C sharp minor is a C sharp, an E, and a G sharp. So in this case, we have the C sharp, and then we have the E up here on the top. But now we have a B instead of our G sharp, right? And so I guess technically this would be considered a C sharp minor 7, which has our B in it, and no G sharp in it. And then for our A major chord here, we'll just quickly run through this. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. An A major has an A C sharp, and an E in it. And if we look at what we're doing here, we have our A as our root note, our tonic. We have a B and an E. So we don't have the C sharp going on in our B. We actually have in our A, we have a B going on, which is technically an A second, or an A sus 2, which is a 1, 2, 5 right here. If we look at our triads formula here, we have a 1, 2, 5 happening with this A major, not our third. With our C sharp minor, we have a C sharp, an E, a G sharp, and then our 7th, which would be a B, and no G sharp. So hopefully this is making sense. I told you I'd try to explain some of the theory that's going on in this case, but really the way I'm thinking of it is I have these 2 drone notes of B and E. They're going to play the entire time, and then what's happening is that our tonic note is changing and giving us our kind of our reference chord, if you will. So we're having an E, C sharp, an A, and then the E and the B are going to be holding steady throughout the entire time. All right. And then we can go ahead and copy paste this out. And we'll just call this our pad for now. You can call it chords, whatever makes sense to you, really. Like that, whatever you want to label things as, you can label them as. There's no real wrong or right way to do that, as long as you understand what it is. And then let's go ahead and go back to our synth here. And let's see if we can find a fun bass sound here. So we'll go to our browser. And again, we can find something that's kind of close to what we want, and then from there we can always make changes once we understand, you know, what the user interface stuff kind of is. So let's bring up our piano roll view. So that's not bad, but let's try some other stuff and see if we can find something maybe a little bit more in line here with what we're looking for. Okay, so I like that. That's pretty thick. It's fun. So we'll go ahead and use this, and if we want to change it later, we can. And with this, I'm just going to give it a bit of rhythm to correspond with what the drums are doing, the kick specifically. Like the bass and the kick, oftentimes you want to have kind of together. Not always, but bass kind of functions as another rhythm instrument in a lot of ways, as well as kind of holding down the low end of your production. But having it kind of match what the kick is doing will, generally speaking, work pretty well most of the time. And in this case, that's exactly what we're going to do. And so we'll double that up. And we're just putting it on the tonics. We can add some movement to it later if we want to, but for now, I'm kind of just digging this kind of very basic single note kind of bass thing with some rhythm added to it. This C sharp, maybe try putting that up a little bit. That might be just a little low down here. So we'll try it up here and see if that maybe is better. Okay, and then we'll turn it down some because it's probably a little overwhelming. And then you can always change things here with this interface. This is a very fun little plugin, but like essentially you have your oscillator section, and then you can choose, what your oscillator is and things like that. You can use your envelopes to control the, the ADSR, the attack, decay, sustain, and release. And then you can add in an LFO or other fun little things here in this section. It's a fun program. I highly recommend, looking into it if it looks cool, but you have lots of fun little options here, and it's going to be similar to the Antutu that we've been using in other videos, but it's going to have its own idiosyncrasies and ways of kind of controlling things. So, but you can get some fun sounds out of, it doesn't really matter what synth you're using, you can always get some fun sounds, but each one is going to kind of do it in a slightly different way, if you will, or have slightly different features that will make certain functionality easier to work with depending on that interface. But oscillators, filters, envelopes, LFOs, the basic components of all synths, and then it has some extra stuff that you can do, like with modulation and things like this. Here some effects sections here and up here, and then these are some macro controls. So if we were to move these knobs as the bass is playing, or whatever sound we're using, these can be set to various values to make it so that it changes over time. But I don't think we need to worry about any of that right now, because I'm pretty happy with the basic sounds we've got. So I'm not going to go in and tweak too much right now. All right. And so we've got a basic kind of like section of music. Now we can go even further. And what I might want to do, why don't we bring up our Anna 2? Because I think what might be fun is to add a little bit of movement to it. And this particular patch is something that I really like. I've used it in other productions because it adds some fun movement. And ARP is short for arpeggio, and it just kind of automatically make the sound change. So if I were just to hold one key, it's kind of automatically given that sort of fun sound to it. Go to view. And maybe on this one we can add in our third. And then we have our C sharp. Which we already have our third in it, but we don't have our fifth, so we'll keep this G sharp going. And then on the A, I think we're missing our third. So maybe this one can go to our C sharp. Okay, so I'm not quite liking this here. So, and then actually maybe adding a sus4 would be fun here. Okay, so maybe something like that. Again, we can play with. I'm probably spending too much time on this kind of thing, but just adding a little bit of movement and a little bit of some extra kind of interest going on. And we're going to do a little bit of compression on the drums. Okay, and so we've got kind of a rough section here. And like we did last time, what we can do here is have work on some arrangement stuff. So like, for instance, let's maybe mute a few things here. Okay, so maybe we pull some of this stuff out for a little bit and just have this kind of little thing here be the intro-y section. Actually, maybe what I want to try and do here is maybe do this instead. And then with these, I actually kind of think I liked it better being up an octave. But what we can do is on this, we can do some automation where we can have this kind of slowly come in using a filter. So this is a filter that is kind of emulating, I'll just show you, with one knob. It's basically doing this, right? So we'll turn this one knob off for right now, but all right. So it's going to emulate that kind of vibe. All right. And so I'm digging that. And that's kind of like just quiet it out a little bit, but you kind of saw the example. So like what I did with the with this filter is what this is doing essentially. And then we can write in some automation later if we want, but I actually kind of like just the general vibe of this sort of feel. Okay, so maybe this is a verse, or maybe it's a chorus. It could be whatever. It's very arbitrary at this point. And so what we might want to do next is transition into a new section, be it a verse or a chorus or whatever. And so we can take the chords here that we were using, and remember we are using a 1-6-4 chord progression. So you know, maybe we can go to something else, like I don't know, like a 5-3 or something along those lines. We can kind of try some arbitrary stuff. So maybe the next what we want to have happen is, let's see what happens when we try out a B here with our pad here. And we can even keep this kind of drone going here with the E and the B. But now we move this to a B. All right. And we'll just play this out and just kind of see if we like this chord. Yeah, I don't know why that happens sometimes, but... Okay. So let's go ahead and do a B. To a C sharp. To an A, maybe? And then we may have to have this... to an E. And if we look at our thing, so what we're doing is we're going for a 5, a 6, a 4, and then a 1. 5, 6, 4, 1. So B, C sharp minor, A, E. We're just kind of changing up this chord progression in this chorus section here, or whatever. And then we can start, filling in the low notes here. So we're going to A, B. C sharp. A. To an E. And then we're going to play this just as a reference. So we're going to play the last little bit of this section going into this section and see maybe what if we're inspired to do any changes to the drums or if we want to keep them going. Okay. So maybe we want to hit a ride. I feel like these drums I want maybe something a little chill. I guess that's fine. And then, again, we're going to do every other down, so we have our strong and weak beats happening. And we're moving to the ride just to kind of open up the song here a little bit. And then we can take our... let's copy this out. Let's turn these down just a hair. and copy paste it out. Okay, and so we've changed up our drum pattern a little bit. We're going to a ride here. And we may even want to have there it is. So we're adding a crash here, and probably we'd do a fill, and that's something we can come back around to, but. And because we are changing what the drums are doing, we probably want to change a little bit what the bass is doing as well. Let's bring this up here. Okay. And then maybe we just have this repeat one more time. And then we can bring in our melody here. Okay. So, sorry, that was a lot of messing around without explaining much. But we're having this kind of E droning note here going on, these like kind of odd things. And I'm just trying to change up the rhythms and the pitches of this melody as kind of we're going. And I was just kind of experimenting and trying out different things as I went to make sure I liked it. And I'm playing it, referencing. So this may be something you like. It might be not something you like. I don't know. But like the idea is I'm just spending some time trying to work on this melody and make it kind of work in a fun way. All right, and then what we can do is bring back in our verse section here. And then you can play around with the arrangement as we go. So, taking things in, putting things out, like just kind of playing around with the general flow of things, right? Now, we could keep going on this for a while, but I've spent a lot of time on this already, and I don't want to bore everybody. I know that I just went through like a whole 15 or 20 minutes of working on that melody without saying a single word about what I was doing. I apologize, but I was just trying to listen to what was going on and just kind of feel out what I thought was appropriate and what might be cool in this new chorus section and stuff like that. And I'm just trying to give you guys some examples. And it may look complicated, and it might be, but essentially, we're just using all the notes of the scale again of E, right? E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, D sharp, and E. And we're just incorporating them in ways that made sense to me, right? And, I had to play around with it a little bit and make sure I liked what I was hearing, and was playing with some fun syncopated things and have this kind of drony E note kind of going all the way through up until this D sharp here at the end. And then I want to try and make the second verse, or the second, if we call this an A section and a B section, I want the next A section to be a little bit different from our first A section in different ways, right? And so we can play with this arrangement and just make sure everything is kind of coming together. We might even want to pull out this melody and just have the chords in instead. All right, so there's different ways you can go about doing this, and you can play with it and see what you like, what you don't like. And then what we can do, again, this video is starting to get a little long, so we're going to cut it a little bit short. Or like, we're not going to finish this whole thing today, obviously. But hopefully this is giving you an example of how you can kind of go about incorporating different ideas and themes and, the know-how of how to kind of start coming up with these ideas on your own and producing your own music, right? But this next section would be maybe a little bit different again from the verse and the chorus, maybe a different chord progression, a different drum loop, or whatever. And we call this a bridge section, a C section, whatever you want to call it. And then you can go back to a chorus, or you don't have to at all. You can just kind of have this be the end of the song if that's kind of all you really want. There's no right or wrong. Again, when it comes to any of this, I'm just trying to give you some ideas and some thoughts about how you can start kind of coming together and putting this stuff together. I'll play this song one more time, kind of from the top, and you can listen through and kind of see the flow. This is not done by any means. There's a lot more that would have to be done to this. We want to go in and fill in the details, add drum fills, maybe add some other sections, some different ear candy things. There's a lot more that can be done with this song. Even outside of just adding some lyrics or something kind of like that. But this should at least kind of get your mind kind of going in the way of how this can come together, I guess. So anyways, I'll play it one more time just so you can kind of get a general feel for what I've done here. And like I said, it's not done, but you can get kind of like a general idea of where it could go from here. All right. Yeah. So obviously not done, but hopefully this is giving you kind of a picture of where you can go with this kind of stuff, and just kind of inspire you maybe to work on your own productions, and give you a little bit of food for thought. For instance, you want to keep your music kind of evolving as you go. So we're not bringing everything in. There are times where you do want to bring everything in, and that's fine. But in this case, we're kind of starting off soft. We're introducing things as it goes, and then we kind of have it come in full here. Our drums and our chords and everything is kind of changing up in this chorus section. Then when we get back into our verse section, or our B section, if you will, or A section rather. So we have, our A section, our B section, what I'm calling the chorus, our verse section, which I'm calling the A section. When we get back into this A section, we're trying to make it a little bit different than it was here, to just kind of keep it sort of changing and evolving so that it's not stagnant. We don't want it to be complete. We're doing a lot of copy and pasting, but we don't want it to be completely the same as this first verse. Otherwise, your song might start to get a little boring, for lack of a better word. There are little things that you can do here also to help transition from your verses to your chorus, or your A sections to your B sections. And that's stuff like drum fills, swells, introducing other instruments. There's, a lot of things that we could do yet to really bring this more to life. This is really just a basic framework so far. We're kind of, we laid down the foundation, and and it's a decent foundation. And then we're starting to put together our template here, figure out where our verses and choruses are, and doing a little bit of the arrangement kind of stuff here. And then it's just, again, lacking some of the finer details that are going to really bring the song to life in a real sense. And this can be a lot of different things, from drum fills to ear candy to other instruments to lyrics, all sorts of things that we can do to kind of fill in the details of this to really make it come alive. We're going to cover that kind of stuff in future videos, but I want to give you guys a basic framework to help you with these first few steps here in the process. Finding the inspiration, laying down the foundation, and kind of getting your template together, and figuring out some of the basics of your arrangements and things like that. Because this is 80% of your song right here. The details is the last 20%. They're an important 20%, don't get me wrong, but the vast majority of your song is going to be in these first three kind of steps of the process. And remember, as you're going through all of these processes, you're always asking yourself, does this sound good to me? And as you saw, I was kind of playing different sections over and over again, and just trying things out as I went to make sure I liked it. I'm always asking, does this sound good to me? And if it does, I keep going. And if not, I change something. Now, I would probably change a few things on this song if I was really doing it for real. Some small things here or there. But, for what this is, as just a basic example of how you can kind of start putting together your own music, I think this will suffice. So with that, we'll leave it here. I hope this has been helpful. I guess one other thing I want to add is I'm trying to incorporate also some of the concepts and ideas over effects that you can add to kind of bring this to life. So let's listen to this again, but let's turn all of the effects off. So I'm turning all of the things I added onto it off, including our delay and our reverb and all that kind of stuff. Okay, and now here's with everything back on. Oh, I forgot to turn the... Right. So little things like that can really help, whether it's a little bit of EQ on something, some delay or some reverb, compression. There's all sorts of little subtle things that you can do to your track to kind of give it just a little bit of extra vibe and character, to help kind of tailor it to what it is that you want it to be, right? And we can take this, even further if we wanted to. And then, like I said in previous videos, go ahead and do whatever you think is necessary to get your sounds sounding the way they ought to. And then when when it comes time for the final mix, then you can, let the mixing engineer or whoever's going to be doing the mix worry about, what how they would process it later. But this is just the production stage, right? You're just trying to get things cohesive and working together in a way that you think it sounds good to you. And you can do whatever it takes to do that. Like, again, whether that's EQ, compression, reverb, delay, distortion, chorus, all the things that we've talked about and understanding some of the signal flow and how all this kind of thing, these things work together, can really help with that process. But anyways, like I said, we're going to leave it there for today. Next week, we're going to continue to do this kind of thing. And again, I'm going to try and use different starting off points. Like last week, we started with chords. This week, we started with melody. Next week, maybe we'll start with drums or something along those lines. But I'm just trying to show you that you can start a song anywhere, really. And the point is you can take that starting point and expand on it and turn it into something that's. But anyways, I am probably rambling at this point. Hope this has all been helpful. I hope you guys have yourselves a wonderful day and a wonderful week, and I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.